You're listening to the FairTax for All radio program, where we bring you everything and anything fair tax related. And now, your host, Alex Molesky.
You know, that guy giving the intro has a beautiful voice. Good gosh. And I also like this music. Welcome to the FairTax for All radio show, folks, where our discussion is centered around income taxes, specifically the current U.S. income tax code. Our main goals here on the show are to educate and inform in order to eliminate the IRS and our horrendous tax code. Listen in this next hour, and I promise you that you will be entertained and learn something. Before I get too far into any show, I like to give those of you new to the FairTax a brief intro. The fair tax is a bill that eliminates the IRS and replaces the current tax code with a national sales tax of 23% on new goods and services, not used. No more FICA taxes out of your paychecks. Everybody pays fake FICA taxes. Fake taxes, it feels like it. The 23% sales tax that you pay at the register for the new goods and services I mentioned, that's where the tax dollars come to fund Medicare and Social Security. The fair tax does not eliminate any government plans, just the collection method of taxation. Also, in addition to replacing the income tax, the fair tax also provides each Social Security card holding person a monthly prepaid check to cover the 23% sales tax up to the poverty level. This is not welfare, folks. This is only to ensure we are not taxed on necessities. The fair tax lowers the tax rate on every single tax bracket and at the same time helps to address the issue of our growing unsustainable national debt. It is a tax plan that shrinks the size of government and puts every American in a better financial position. Please go to fairtaxcalculator.org and enter your own numbers to see if you'd be better off under the fair tax. Last week on our show, we had Steve Curtis, the director of the state of Ohio. He joined me on the show and we discussed district targeting, specifically how many elections on the federal level are decided by 10,000 voters or less. Very small percentage, folks. In Arizona, there are 3 tight elections in Congress right now, which could go either way in the 1st, 2nd, and 9th districts. I'm in the midst of getting as much info as I can on the candidates, but only one candidate in those districts, that's number 9, that I can tell has openly denounced the IRS and called for the elimination of them and replacement of the current tax code. That would be retired Air Force Colonel Wendy Rogers in the 9th. Find a candidate that wants to get rid of the IRS and back them if you care about your hard-earned dollars. Go to their offices, call them, email them, tell them you're ready to work for them, get on board. Anyway, last week was a great show, and if you like all past shows, it's archived at molesky.com. You can go listen to them on your tablets, your phones. You can also I put up video of the show. Why? I don't really know. But you get to see fun things like a banner I have right behind me for the Unfair movie. And, I also put the clips. If I have a clip of somebody saying something, put little things up there. But it's fun. Anyway, let's move on. I actually did have a very good question from the Unfair movie. Unfair movie ticket giveaway. And I'll get to that plus a bunch more later. So listen in for the next hour. Soak up some great fair tax info, and after the show, Dennis Prager will be on. Yes, Dennis Prager, the fair tax fan. I'm glad he's following me. Okay, let's talk about something very obvious, folks. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to me. No, not really. It's not my birthday, but it's the show's birthday. We've been on the air for a year. Right, Jeremy? You've been stuck with me that long, buddy.
I love it. 365.
365. Well, this is our 53rd show, and if something sounded a little bit different as our show charted, it's sharded. I'm getting a lot of SHs, man. It might be because I'm parched. I don't know. At least I'm not cursing, folks, right? But anyway, we usually start our show with the Beatles' Taxman from the classic Revolver album, and we've been doing that for the past year and replaced it with Spin Doctors, Jimmy Olsen's Blues. One of the numerous hits from the Spin Doctors' 1991 release, Pocket Full of Kryptonite, the album that sold over 5 million copies. So why am I changing the music on the show? Good question. I have many reasons, but the main one is that I went to high school with the lead singer of the Spin Doctors, Chris Barron. I want to promote my friends. Why not? Beatles, they have enough money. He's on a plane right now on his way back from Europe, so I'll have him on the show at a later date. I also want to let you know that I listened to this LP about 100 times in the first year it came out, and it still holds up beautifully. Chris's album Pocketful of Kryptonite is actually getting re-released on green vinyl. How cool is that? Next month, and it's going to be exclusively available through Soundstage Direct, which, by the way, is run by a very good friend of both Chris's and myself, Seth Frank. So if you want a seriously good listen, great funky blues and rock classics, buy it. It's only available through SoundstageDirect.com. It had the huge top 40 hits, Little Miss Can't Be Wrong and Two Princes, which you hear at every stadium. It's just a solid album throughout. I'll add to it that Chris is a real patriot. He's gone overseas multiple times to perform his multiple top 40 hits and other great tunes to the troops. Actually, I have a great blues album. The Whiskey album just came out. Man, they still have it. So anyway, if you take the time to listen to the song, the intro song, my reason for picking that one is, well, you know, it's about Jimmy Olsen's frustrations of Lois Lane panning for Superman and Jimmy's crush on her. So I guess we will all be Jimmy here, and Superman is the current tax code, and Jimmy is the real man, folks. Superman's not real, so remember, Superman is from another planet, and maybe Lois Lane needs to stop getting blinded by the power of the current tax plan or Superman and look for an alternative. You know, I'd like to say that our Pocketful of Kryptonite FairTax can bring the super bad tax code to its knees. So anyway, great respect and appreciation for this incredibly talented man, Chris. I appreciate his blessing on me to use his song, and I'll make sure to have him on in the future. He is a fun guy to chat with, man. He's funny. So anyway, it's our birthday, and welcome to the show. Quick update for you on the Convention of States. For those of you unfamiliar with the Convention of States, it's very briefly, but hopefully accurately, it is a loophole the Founding Fathers put into the Constitution. Bottom line is they added it in case the elected powers that be acted as a monarchy and decided to ignore their constituents. Remember when the country was founded, there were 13 states and many less elected officials in the government level. They feared that they could just group together and just shut everybody out and just lead however they wanted without representing us, the people. So that's where the Convention of States is put in. And my update is that I want to clarify to all of you, since I've had quite a few people talk to me about the Convention of States recently, and I wanted to clarify that there are multiple groups out there, not just one, working to support various potential amendments. So some are more complex and some varying in desired amendments to the Constitution. Almost every single one is budget related, but there are conflicting opinions, like in most cases, as to which amendments make the most sense to our Constitution. The longest running one by far to date is the Balanced Budget Amendment, which I'm sure most of you have heard of. It's been in the works for decades, and it has recently gained quite a bit of steam. There are 24 of the needed 34, or two-thirds of the states needed at this time to bring the balanced budget to a vote at the federal level. Now, remember, 3/4 of the states, 38 to be precise or more, are required to vote yes on identical verbiage in order to pass an amendment. There are other groups out there like the Convention of States Project, which I am a big fan of. They are newer to this game, getting on board. They haven't been working on it for 20 years, but believe in just over a year or so, they have 3 states signed on for their amendment process. They're a more complex project than the Balanced Budget Amendment, and for good reason, I believe. The big difference between the Balanced Budget Amendment, and this is why I'm talking about it, because this is very important to clarify, and the Convention of States Project, is the depth. The Convention of States Project fully supports the Balanced Budget Amendment. They just they don't want to stop there, want to do a little more. They figure that it's such a monumental task to bring any amendments to the Constitution through the convention, a ton of work to get it passed. And then if they do pass it, or when we do pass it, people are going to want to say, hey, let's wait, let's see what happens. And then it might take many years to reboot and get another convention. So they don't want to stop right there, especially the Balanced Budget Amendment does not succeed in really helping our country. For example, think about it. What if this amendment prompts the government to raise revenue more than cutting spending? Spending must be dealt with directly, hence the Convention of States projects wanting more. Number 2 being that they don't think it's enough to help our country out of this mess. We are on a big mess, folks. And the timing is ripe. So get it right the first time is how the Convention of States Project is taking this. And I tend to agree with them. Let me go down a few of the points in it. In addition to a balanced budget amendment, the Convention of States Project also wants to see a redefinition of the general welfare clause. The original view was that the federal government could not spend money on any topic within the jurisdiction of the states. They also want a redefinition of the Commerce Clause. Originally, the view was that Congress was granted a narrow and exclusive power to regulate shipments across state lines, not all the economic activity of the nation. They want a prohibition of using international treaties and law to govern the domestic laws of the United States. The Convention of States Project also wants a limitation of using executive orders and federal regulations to enact laws, since Congress is supposed to be the exclusive agency to enact laws. I can talk about another one of those things that happened, heard about last night that I was reminded of. Another one is imposing term limits on Congress and the Supreme Court. I love this one. Too many deep pockets, I think, involved in Congress. Lots of good people out there, but too many deep pockets, people buying out politicians. And the Supreme Court. These guys and gals don't need to be elected for 40 years. I'm sorry. Experience is valuable, but sometimes at some point they just need to recluse themselves and get out of it. I don't know. Also, placing an upper limit on federal taxation. I have the answer there, folks. And requiring the sunset of all existing federal taxes and a supermajority vote to replace them with new fair taxes. Voila. So that's basically what they're about. Simply put, as Dustin Romney, Coalition's director of Arizona Convention of States, put it, it must be understood that Congress has a range of options it can use to find revenue other than raising taxes. For example, they may eliminate credits, deductions, and other adjustments, which cumulatively are valued at over $1 trillion. So basically, if you just have a balanced budget amendment, they can start chopping away at things and wouldn't get helped. Anyway, if you want more information and hear about it, go to my website, Molesky.com, on the events section. They're having an event October 4th in Phoenix. Michael Ferris, head of the Convention of States Project, will be there talking, and be a good chance for you to get involved, volunteer, and work towards the project, coming to fruition. All right. We're going to go to break. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to you. And we'll be right back after these messages. Thanks. Welcome back to the FairTax for All radio show. I'm your host, Alex Molesky, and we're talking fair tax here on our anniversary. I just want to say I'd be remiss in not forgetting to mention all the great people that stopped by the Fair Tax booth today out at the North Scottsdale Christian Church. The event was to market freedom, products and great ideas, and the Fair Tax falls right into that category. So thanks so much for stopping by and talking about the Fair Tax and the Unfair movie, about exposing the IRS for all the wonderful things that they do. Basically, the movie took up most of my discussion time today, but that's okay. I really want to get the word out on this movie. I know you've heard all the ads on the station about me talking about the highly anticipated movie. It's hitting the theaters around the country on October 14th. And I don't know how to say this enough. I encourage everybody to mark that Tuesday, October 14th evening as the night to go to the movie. If this movie is a success, this is going to be a great step in helping us get a president in 2016 that is serious about tax reform. I don't want to go into it any more than that, but please take my word at that. Go to the movie, support it. If you want people looking out for you and lowering your taxes and eliminating the IRS, go to the movie. I think that's all I need to say, except for it's a one-time showing, so don't miss it. 7 p.m. nationwide. You can visit my website, Molesky.com, under the events tab, and I'll have a link to the unfairmovie.com also, or just go to unfairmovie.com. I'm hosting the event at the AMC Desert Ridge Theaters in Scottsdale, and I'm hoping to have a huge crowd there. Don't think we're sold out yet, and you can visit my website to find out more. And I have more tickets. I'm going to give away 3 more tickets this week. So send me a question, and the first 3 will get a ticket to the movie. Doesn't matter if you don't think it's a good question, as long as it's a real FairTax question. Email me at alex@molesky.com. And if you are announced on the air, you might have some bonus goodies in addition to your ticket. So I'll also have books to give away in October sometime of The Unfair. If you want to order your advance copy right now and don't feel like waiting for that, you can go to barnesandnoble.com or Amazon and just type in Unfair and Craig, and the book will show up, and you can order your advance copies too. How big is the movie going to be? It really depends on you. It's as simple as that. This is the first ever movie that has come out against the IRS in theaters, folks. If you want real change, here it is. Actually, Jeremy, there was the interview from Mike Huckabee this past week. Do you have that one queued up at all, or did I mess that one up on you? You do have that one? That was about a 4-minute one. Folks, here's an interview from Mike Huckabee this past week. Jeremy, do me a favor and play it, would you, buddy?
Again, this week, the conservative website Breitbart.com said it's being audited by the IRS, and Breitbart executives believe it's politically motivated. Well, there's a new documentary film that's called Unfair. It's got a brilliant concept. How about getting rid of the Internal Revenue Service altogether?
We have a supposed revenue collection agency that isn't about revenue. They're about intimidating people. They're about harassing people. We've come to see the IRS as all-powerful. With what's supposed to be just a tax code, they have come to impact our politics, our families, our children, and our faith. A violation of the duty of government to protect our inalienable rights.
Joining me is the film's producer, Craig Bergman. Craig, it's great having you here.
It is great to be here, Governor.
And I'm going to tell you, I really do love the film because you get into some areas of what the IRS is doing that most Americans have no idea. We know about Lois Lerner's emails. We understand the targeting of the Tea Party groups and pro-life groups and pro-Israel groups. But there's some things that you have pointed out in this film that you document from going across America. It's stunning. And one of them has to do with adoption. Now, I guess I'm just totally blown away. I had no idea the IRS could get involved in someone's adoption. I want to, before I get to ask you the question, look at this clip and then react to it for me, Craig.
Going through this experience, what are your feelings about America? Is this the America that you grew up in? Is this the American dream?
You know, we adopted our daughter because we wanted to have family, and we brought her out of China from under the control of one oppressive government, not to bring her home, to put her under another oppressive government.
This is scary stuff. How does the IRS tinker with adoptive parents?
Well, there's a thing called the adoption tax credit, and it helps offset the cost of adoptions, especially overseas foreign adoptions. And certainly these children who have, disadvantages, handicaps, medical issues, things like that. And the IRS, in this particular case, drug those folks through 5 years of audits, every little thing they possibly could. And, the evidence is there. They had a child, they adopted it, they had their stuff, but the IRS was abusive. They were not just, thorough. They actually seemed, from the point of view of Steve and his family, to have enjoyed harassing them.
You point out so many things in this film. You travel across the country, you see abuse after abuse that you document, firsthand. Was there something that stood out as the most outrageous abuse of the IRS?
Well, actually, I think we're still hearing about those, Mike, and that's the real trouble that we have with this, is I wanted to tell the story that it isn't just about the Tea Party. It isn't just about even families or veterans or groups like that. Our very religious liberty is what is at stake here.
Well, how is the religious liberty? Because most people say, well, look, they check my taxes, but they don't ask me what I believe and where I go to church.
Well, they ask what your church can preach. They ask what your church can do. One of the things we do in the movie is we talk about the history of the church, the history of the pastors, the Black Robe Regiment that was responsible for the First Great Awakening that led to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And we've lost that spirit in America. And since the Johnson Amendment in 1954, we've had this, I mean, they're trying to pass an amendment to end the First Amendment. That's how outrageous this has become.
One thing that would solve this, and I know you and I share a passion, the implementation of the FairTax. Why does that change everything?
Well, the FairTax changes everything because it gets rid of the IRS. It's an abolishment movement. If you look at the history, we had an abolition of slavery. And we had people at the time who said, well, let's just have free states and slave states. We have to have abolition over slavery, or over life and abortion, the way we did over slavery, and we have to have it over the IRS to get our liberties back.
I've seen the film. I like the film. I love the idea of getting rid of the IRS, and if people come out by the hundreds of thousands and even millions on October the 14th, we are well on our way to seeing that dream come true. Craig, thanks for being here. Delighted to have you.
Bottom line is the big boys are getting behind this movie, folks, but they can only do so much. We the Minutemen, we need to step up to the plate. So I really hope that you'll join me on the 14th to change our country for the better. Just so you know, the people behind this film, one of the big men behind it, John Sullivan, he was the other half of the team of Dinesh D'Souza that brought you 2016's Obama's America. So if you enjoyed that at all, I definitely suggest you get out to this. There's a lot of new things involved in this film that are not getting told by the media, not even Fox. If this movie is a success, the makers of the movie have promised to bring tax reform to the front during the 2016 election cycle. If you want a president that is on board for comprehensive tax reform, I would seriously suggest getting out to the movie theaters October 14th. Folks, we're going to break right now. I'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the Fair Tax for All radio show. I'm your host, Alex Molesky. We're talking about everything fair tax and the Unfair movie, of course. I really hope you'll join me at the movie theaters on October 14th to see that great movie, Unfair. Unfairmovie.com. Check it out, folks. In my efforts, folks, to continue sharing with you prominent people in the media, like Mike Huckabee we just heard, that supports the fair tax or are basically open to the fair tax, I'm going to play clips of these known celebrities to show you how widespread the love for the fair tax really is and how it's growing. In this clip I'm about to play for you, we have a non-celebrity this time, but he's a grassroots fair tax supporter. His clip is so well-spoken and so to the point that it bears playing here on the show. Actually, in the fair tax world, he is a bit of a celebrity. One I really need to have on as a guest in the future, and he's agreed to come on. This young man is Paul Wizakowski, and he presents it perfectly, in my mind. Anyway, here are his thoughts on the fair tax. Listen in.
My name is Paul Wizakowski. I'm 26 years old, and I love this country. I love this country because it knows what I'm capable of. This country knows how valuable I am. It knows how valuable you are. I love this country because its success is based on my success. See, this country was founded without limiting how much I can do and make and be, so that I would pursue as much as I could make and do and be. No other country puts its future so squarely on the shoulders of its people like the United States. And no other country rewards that responsibility as well as America. Imagine then if this great country were to raise its necessary revenue without inhibiting that work ethic. Imagine if we didn't take the gas out of the engine. That is the fair tax. That is the fair tax. You see, I want to work hard. I want to make something of myself. I want to be better than my parents, better than my current circumstances, better than what other people say I'm capable of. I want to work hard, but I gotta have the tools to do that. I gotta have the resources for that, and that is the heart of the FairTax. What the FairTax means to me is potential restored and ambition rewarded, and by an extension, an ever greater nation for the next generation. My name is Paul Wizakowski, and I'm a FairTax supporter.
I played his clip in its entirety, folks, since I wanted to sink in. Control. Control to grow. Control of your own destiny. With the government out of the way. Out of the way of competing with you and just being there to protect us. I honestly feel like Mr. Wizakowski is me 20 years ago. I commend him for taking up the FairTax cause at a young age and thinking not only of his own self, but future generations that deserve a better system. A simple, fair system, not unlike one that our founding, much unlike one that our founding fathers envisioned. Not this broken down maze of rules and regulations. Not this tax code where they require you to calculate how much you owe and then penalize you if you mistake, on it. It's just so backwards. I never really thought of it, but this mess of a tax code sort of reminds me of the Winchester House. You might know that by name, but that's the one that has all the doors leading to nowhere, staircase leading to nowhere. It's the house where the widow Winchester, she thought she had to have builders keep building in order to stay alive, and where so much of the building was useless. Kind of like our tax code. I'm starting to think maybe she wrote the tax code for the IRS. I don't know. It just goes nowhere. Anyway, thank you so much, Mr. Wizakowski. Paul, I'm going to have you on, and we're going to go to break in just a minute. When I come back, I want to take the FairTax question and answer that I'm posting on the show today. It's a good one and in lines of Mr. Wizakowski. So, folks, stay tuned for these messages. We'll be right back with more FairTax for All after this. Welcome back to the FairTax for All radio show. I'm your host, Alex Molesky, having fun talking about FairTax and Unfair the movie. I will be promoting it for the next month because we only have 25 days till it hits the theaters, folks. Or is it 26, 24? I have to learn how to count, but October 14th is the date. You just heard the Paul Wizakowski clip. Love it. Love this young man. Anyway, now it's time for me to take the question from Dave. He's a listener of the show, and his timing is perfect with this one last week. We just heard Mr. Wizakowski talk about the fairness of the FairTax and the government getting out of the way of the people. Limited government as our founding fathers envisioned for us. Listener Dave, you are now also one of the ticket winners for the Unfair movie on October 14th. I'm glad you're going to be going to Desert Ridge, and I'll see you there. Dave in Arizona, by the way, commented that the FairTax should really help someone his own age. That is, someone around 30 years old. He asked me to clarify and confirm his assessment of the FairTax. Dave, the simple answer is yes. You'll be better off under the FairTax versus our current tax code, whether you're 30, 10, or 100. Doesn't matter. Of course, the younger you are, the longer you live, the more you'll be able to reap the benefits of the FairTax. If you are 20 and going to college, for example, And if you need student loans, the cost of your education will cost about half as much as it does now. Why? Because education is not taxed under the fair tax. Whereas if you have a loan, that loan is taxed, and so are the wages earned to pay the loan in education. Half the cost, education. That's impressive. If you're 30, consider this. You're saving to buy a home, and you're taking home your whole paycheck instead of leaving a big chunk of it behind in income taxes and FICA taxes. Therefore, you have all of your paycheck, and if you want to save a little more, it's easier just by spending a little less. And you are therefore better enabled to save and buy that home that much sooner. If you're 50 and you lose your job, you can dig into your retirement savings without a penalty because you only pay taxes on purchases, not income. I can't tell you how many people that have lost their jobs in the last 10 years and have paid penalties and taxes on their retirement savings, basically depleting their savings, and due to penalties and taxes, only really having half or less of their retirement money available. Under the fair tax, they would have the use of all of it. If you're 70 and you decide to retire, under the fair tax, Social Security and Medicare will be solvent because the sales tax base with a growing population can collect enough money to pay out these programs. Whereas under the current system, there are not enough workers in the work pool to pay for the aging population and growing percentage of retirees versus the workforce. Simple math, folks. If you're 80 and you decide to downsize and sell your home, well, guess what? You'll pay no taxes on any gains you may have made on that sale. And I know a lot of you know that. A lot of homeowners, that's their biggest source of retirement when they sell the home or they decide to move on to a smaller place. Okay, and here's the last example I guess I have for you now. If you're 100, Dave, and it's time to go meet your maker, anything you've saved, all of your personal wealth will be passed on tax-free to whoever you want or whatever organization you want. Tax-free. So yes, someone your age is better off under the fair tax, Dave. Thanks for the question, Dave in Arizona, and congratulations on winning a ticket to the Unfair movie. I'll see you October 14th. Now, folks, the offer from last week still stands. Email me a question about the fair tax, and if you are one of the first 3 people to email me, I'll buy your ticket to the Unfair movie. If I read it on the air, I'll send you a bonus gift fair tax related. That's it for now. Moving on, I want to talk about more of those advanced questions about the fair tax. I want to thank fair tax supporters Doug Hartlove and John O'Rourke for their research and answers to these fair tax questions. I can't do the show alone. It's not the questions necessarily that are difficult to answer, but they deserve more than a sentence or two. And since we all process things differently in different ways and teach them in different ways, I love having this different approach, or a different lesson plan, I should say. Tonight's question is, how does the fair tax treat charitable organizations, nonprofits, and churches? I guess that's a good one since I just told Dave when he meets his maker, if he's 100 years old and leaves everything behind, well, won't get taxed. I have covered this on the show about how the fair tax treats charitable organizations. But it's been quite a few months. And just like I like teaching my kids how to use the washer or dryer, it's okay to approach it in a different way and at a different time as a reminder of maybe possibly a better lesson plan. So, how does the fair tax treat charitable organizations, nonprofits, or churches? There are 2 groups in the 21st century American that must be protected or no legislation whatsoever will go anywhere. That's number 1, the poor, and number 2, nonprofit groups. The prebate ensures that no one pays any federal taxes up to the poverty level. And nonprofits are pretty much handled like they are pre-fair tax, but with greater simplification because of the fair tax itself and with a large improvement of the elimination of the Johnson Amendment. There is no definition of churches in H.R. 25, the fair tax bill. Instead, every organization where no net earnings inure to the benefit of a private shareholder or individuals comes under Section 706, not-for-profit organizations of the legislation. Such organizations will be given a qualification certificate that can be presented to the providers of taxable goods and services in lieu of the nonprofit paying the fair tax when the nonprofit engages in normal business activities. Very important. The fair tax does not treat sources of income to qualified nonprofits like contributions as the purchase of taxable goods or services. And as such, they are fair tax free. So churches and other nonprofits, you just keep going on, but it's simple. You don't have to worry about all this wild and crazy filing and paperwork. Now, the qualified nonprofit is required to charge and pay the fair tax on any sale of taxable goods or services at their fair market value, such as the selling of Bibles. Now, when nonprofits provide services at no charge, like, say, running a soup kitchen for the poor, there is no fair tax involved at all. The fair tax treats churches like businesses, although in the nonprofit category, the preacher and staff will pay taxes on personal consumption and things such as church-provided housing, just like the people in the business world. The following is Bill Rawlson's portion of an exchange from 2013 that provides a common sense explanation of how and why the fair tax treats nonprofits as it does. To most conservative Christians, the complaint is about the government's limitations of their free speech. Prior to 1954, churches and other nonprofits could speak up for the candidates of their choice without limitations. One such church spoke up against Lyndon Baines Johnson when he was first running for the Senate. After his election, he responded by introducing the Johnson Amendment, and he successfully got it passed. That, folks, is what limits the church's ability to speak out today. The fair tax abolishes the sections of tax code that supports that amendment and the agency that enforces it, allowing them to practice free speech once again. Now, regarding a different treatment for nonprofits, my opinion is the fair tax supports the same treatment of individuals. As an individual, if I choose to give money or other needed support away to my struggling neighbor under the fair tax, it isn't taxed. It's giving it away. It is simply a gift. If instead I give money to my church, who then gives it to a struggling neighbor, and the struggling neighbor of other members of the community on my behalf, then there is no difference. It was a gift from me voluntarily, given based on my desire to help others and based on the charitable cause I support, and then voluntarily passed on by the church to those I'm interested in giving to. There are costs associated with helping others, and those costs supporting the giving activities are not taxed. In this regard, nonprofits are treated as a business. It's all the same. It's all fair. So the fair tax doesn't tax a nonprofit's inputs nor its outputs. Giving activities, that is, folks. The fair tax does tax sales by the nonprofit of goods and services. For example, a baked goods sale. The nonprofit is responsible to collect and submit the sales taxes in those cases. You know, I mean, I know this is a long topic, but I think it's still so important to cover. And there is a difference between me giving a gift to my neighbor and me giving it to you to give to my neighbor. It is considered a gift, not consumption, in either case under the fair tax. Let me move on a little bit. You know what? As to what intended entity should be not-for-profit, that's another good question, and it's part of this. The fair tax leaves the definition the same as it was originally passed in the early 1900s. Personally, in the use of unions operating in non-right-to-work states, I don't think they should have nonprofit status. They do not operate with voluntary gifts. They are using forced dues, whether you agree with their education services or not. Since there is no opportunity not to volunteer, they are free to use the money for causes you may not potentially support. To me, that is different than an organization giving in my behalf. So, you know, you can also draw the same parallel to the taxing of the government. While like a charity, the government is a charity, folks. It can be said to provide free goods and services to the needy. Contributions are not given voluntarily. The purpose of the collected funds are not used to support things I support in my behalf. In fact, they are often used against my wishes. But in general, I have no problem with not-profits and their tax treatment today. other than the Johnson Amendment or under the Fair Tax, which fixes the problem with speech. I do feel that once the cost of government becomes equally visible to everyone, there will be many, many changes, including examining what organizations are operating as nonprofits. Meanwhile, enforcement will be the same under the Fair Tax as it will be for businesses and according to the definitions in place. It was long, folks. I know. I appreciate you listening in. It's a good explanation, Bill. And again, thanks to Doug and John for tackling these in-depth explanations. I'll be certain to share more of their great Fair Tax info on shows to come. I definitely welcome any questions you may have in regard to the Fair Tax. And that reminds me to also keep contacting me at Mollusky.com. You go to the website. You can email me from there. Also want you to go to the events pages because lots of events going on. Lots of events. October 4th, there's a couple of events. I know Dennis Michael Lynch will be out there. I know there's also the Convention of States Project. I know there's a Wounded Warriors race coming up on October 25th up in North Scottsdale near Cave Creek. But that's about all I want to talk about, except for I know I changed my intro music, and I'd be remiss in not giving you a heads up to listen to the new closing. Another high school buddy, and the song is Next Stop, and it's by the band Exposed. It was an extremely talented metal band from the 80s and 90s that never really had any big commercial success, but one of my closest friends, Juilliard-trained vocalist, John Russo, he was on scholarship there. He was a lead singer. He was my guest on the very first Fair Tax for All radio show, and he is another great patriot. I think you'll enjoy the song Next Stop. It's not your typical metal song, but it's a lovely acoustic ballad. A song of longing and a man on his way back to his love. I do like to think of it maybe as a tax code on its way back to how the tax code should be in leaving the current mess behind. It's really a beautiful song. I can imagine it as a country song, a pop song, a blues song. You know, anytime I can do that, imagine it as another genre of music, it really just means it's a well-written song. Anyway, great respect and appreciation for both John and Chris, two incredibly talented men. And I appreciate both of them giving me their blessing in using their songs. You know, hey, it is my birthday, right? It is my birthday. Anyway, folks, I'm going to leave a little early so you can hear the end of the song. And thank you once again so much for listening to Fair Tax for All Radio. Jeremy, thanks for being here for a year. And we'll be back next week, folks.